Hey aspirants, welcome back to MCM Initiative, which is Mains Current Affairs Marathon. In today's video, we'll be discussing polity-based topics. So the topics for today's discussion are Election Commission, Constitutional Bodies, Federalism, Anti-Defection Law, Panchayat Raj Institutions and Grassroots Democracies, Governor and Center-State Relation, Judicial Pendency, Digital Personal Data Protection Rules. So let's get started.
Thank you, Chaitanya ma'am. So the first topic that we are discussing is Election Commission. Now, Election Commission of India has been in use because of multiple reasons. So some of the important reasons being one with respect to the appointment process of the election commissioners, and there has also been a lot of debates with respect to the independence of Election Commission of India as such, and also because of the ongoing SIR, that is Special Intensive Revision. So all of these things has made Election Commission a very important topic for this year, especially given that Election Commission is a constitutional body. There can be a potential single question on Election Commission itself in our polity. So in this context, we need to be preparing holistically with respect to Election Commission. So to start with, try to know the important constitutional provisions with respect to Election Commission. So please try to remember the important articles, that is starting from 324 to 329, which provides for various aspects including the superintendent's direction as well as the universal adult suffrage. All of these are covered under Article 324 to 329. So these articles can be either used in the introduction itself or even in the main body according to the demand of the question. Second, try to know what is the importance or significance of Election Commission of India. So herein one of the most important point is upholding democratic principles. So where we say that democracy is of the people, Election Commission plays a very important role in upholding this principle, and also to ensure that the voter participation increases. There is a trust that has to be built in the election system, again in which Election Commission plays a very important role, and also to ensure that there is free and fair elections happening on a regular basis, and also to ensure that the elections are conducted in a proper way. For all of these reasons, Election Commission becomes very important. So please try to know the importance and also try to have the important keywords here: free and fair elections, universal adult suffrage, all of these things which can be used in your answers. And second, understanding about the challenges faced by Election Commission of India. So one of the most important challenge has been with respect to the appointment procedure itself. So there has been a lot of debates going on whether the Election Commission appointment is in a fair manner or should there be any independent body to appoint the Election Commission members. So that is one of the challenge. Second, there has also been a lot of debates going on with respect to the independence of election commissioners. So are they being able to work freely or are they working under the pressure, under the government? This is another debate that is going on. You can quote this. And also there has been this issues with respect to the MCC, Model Code of Conduct. As we know that there is no legal backing for that, its implementation also has been questioned, which is another point. And also parallelly there are a lot of talks with respect to simultaneous elections, whether there should be simultaneous elections or should we go with the existing mechanism. And also talking about the delimitation aspect with respect to the carrying out of elections, and even with respect to the enforcement of different provisions under the RPA, Representation of People's Act, the increasing criminalization of politics, wherein the ADR says nearly 40 to 45% of the politicians have criminal background. All of these are some of the issues with respect to ensuring in free and fair elections in India. So this is the other dimension that you can be talking about. And then also try to know what are the recent measures that have been taken to strengthen the elections as a whole in India. So here we see that there have been a lot of measures taken, so which includes one, the VVPAT, which was recently introduced, and also talking about the C-Vigil app, which provides for better vigilance over the elections by the Election Commission, and talking about the sweep program initiated by Election Commission to create awareness among the people, and also the recent SIR drive to carry out that, to ensure that there are no fake voters, all of these aspects. So these have been some of the steps that have been taken. And also lastly, try to know some of the steps that can be taken further to strengthen the elections in India. So where we can talk about ensuring independence of the election commissioners and ensuring that there is more use of digital tools on technology with respect to election. All of this can be quoted. And also in terms of some of the important recommendations, you can quote the Law Commission, which has provided certain valuable suggestions. So please try to know briefly about the Law Commission and its recommendation as well. So these are some of the things that can be remembered in the context of Election Commission of India.
Sir, along with this, even RPA is also in news. So students, you make sure that you read in detail about RPA as well.
Also, given that RPA is already part of our syllabus, there is a high chance that questions can come on that directly as well.
Well, thank you, Vikas sir. Well, aspirants, the next topic is anti-defection law. And this has been news recently because there's been a recent defection by the AAP MPs and TMC MPs and MLAs. So there have been many questions asked in the mains relevant to this topic. So, well, Manoj sir, let's see the advantageous criticism and way forward to this topic.
So let's look into various constitutional aspects of anti-defection law. So here, 52nd as well as 91st Constitutional Amendment Act becomes very important. And the articles which are directly associated are Articles 101 and 102 for Union and 190 and 191 for states. So along with this, we'll have to look into various provisions for the criteria for disqualifications as well as the exemptions under it. So one needs to know various criteria for elected members belonging to various political parties or nominated members or independent members, and the role of whip in the case of non-compliance with respect to the whip's order. So, and as far as exemptions are concerned, so broadly there are two exemptions. First is the merger with 2/3, and the second exemption is with respect to the presiding officer, be it speaker or deputy speaker. And now speaker becomes very important with respect to anti-defection law. So we should be knowing various powers which the speaker has. The first is, so the speaker is the final interpreter of the case. So his decision is final. And so in the original act had provisions which made speaker immune from judicial review. But Supreme Court in the case Kyoto Holland in 1992. So this particular case removed the bar on judicial review. And the third aspect with respect to speaker is the speaker has the powers to make rules with respect to anti-defection law, and such rules has to be placed in front of the House for 30 days, and the House would have the powers to either amend or to completely repeal such rules. And as far as suo motu powers are concerned, speaker do not have the suo motu powers with respect to anti-defection law. And finally, you can refer the case to the Committee of Privileges for inquiry. So let's talk about the broad advantages of anti-defection law. The first advantage was to provide political stability, and the second was to facilitate democratic realignment by bringing in the merger provision. And the third is, so obviously it would reduce political corruption and thus reducing the horse trading among the members. And finally, it gives a clear-cut constitutional recognition to existence of political parties. So now let's look into the criticisms of anti-defection law. So here, this particular law does not differentiate between defection as well as dissent. So, and along with that, it provides a distinction between the individual defection and the group defection, which is irrational. And along with that, so it also discriminates between the independent members and nominated members, which is also illogical. And finally, the decision maker is the speaker. So here two aspects which are questioned. So first is the impartiality of the speaker. So generally this has been questioned, and along with that, so the speaker lacks the legal knowledge as well as expertise. And finally, we'll look into the solutions. What could be the possible solutions in order to reduce this sort of concerns with respect to anti-defection law? The first is transferring the powers from the speaker to that of a committee or a tribunal, which would have even the judicial members. And the second aspect is bringing in the timeline, that a fixed timeline should be brought in, within which the speaker has to resolve this particular issue. And along with that, so the role of a whip should be narrowed down. Like the members should only be disqualified for voting against the party, especially during non-confidence motion. So apart from that, the other aspects of the whip has to be either removed or the power of whip should be reduced. And finally, we can conclude by saying that the anti-defection law strengthens the political stability as well as the party discipline while preventing opportunities of defection. And along with that, we should also mention few concerns, concerns such as delay as well as legislative independence. Right? And finally, by telling one or two way forwards, we can conclude. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Manoj sir. Well, aspirants, the next topic is judicial pendency, which is going to be discussed by Rajesh sir and Suresh sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Chaitanya ma'am. The next important topic is judicial pendency. It was in news because we have been hearing that there are so many cases pending in Indian Judiciary. If you take approximate number, 4.5 crores cases are pending in overall Indian Judiciary. Specifically with respect to Supreme Court, 80,000 cases are pending. So in this context, this topic becomes very, very important. So we are going to discuss reasons for judicial pendency, how exactly it's going to affect the Indian judiciary and justice system, and is there any government initiatives to address this problem, and finally way forward. So first and foremost, let's start from the reasons for judicial pending of cases. So the first point is inadequate judges. India has around 21 judges per million population, but we should have around 50 judges per million population. So next point is ineffectiveness of ADR. That means alternate dispute resolution. ADR mechanism have not been deployed effectively to meet the alternative resolution mechanism. So suppose if you take the gram analysis, that is proposed to address the rural pending cases and all, but is not deployed properly and they are not effectively. Next important point is systematic and procedural inefficiency. For example, if you look at Indian judicial delays are mainly because of multiple appeals and frequent judgments, and even sometimes poor case management and weak compliances. So next one is lack of infrastructure. So if you look at the infrastructure, most of the courts doesn't have basic amenities, even they don't have proper support staff, and with respect to technology also, they are not aware of how to use modern technology. Over to Rajesh sir.
So in addition to this, the major reason for this infrastructural gap is, so we are spending less than 0.1% of GDP and judicial system. So that's why we don't have proper infrastructure, especially to deliver the justice within time. So apart from that, so government as a litigator, this is the major cause for judicial delay, because nearly 50% of the cases pending which are from the government side. So these are the main causes for the judicial pendency. So definitely, if justice is delayed, so definitely it is having a huge impact on the society and also the judicial system itself. The first and foremost thing is delayed justice actually violating the fundamental right. So because right to speedy trial is one of the fundamental right under Article 21. So then because of this delayed justice, the prisons are overcrowded. So because of under trials. So as per the report, nearly 75% of the prisoners are under trial. Further, it also impacts the overall economy. So because of this judicial delay, so we are losing around 1.5% of GDP every year.
So along with that impacts, so there is a loss of faith in the legal system also, because the long delays can lead to loss of faith in the system among the general public. Next one is, since you already mentioned the impact on economy, along with that there is a financial burden on litigants, because prolonged litigation can be costly for litigants as they have bear the expenses also. So that is the major impact. Due to more number of pending cases, we can witness injustice to the victims and witnesses also, because high pendency can lead to witness forgetting the facts of the case. Even they may die or they may become untraceable also. So this is the major impact on pending cases.
So to address these impacts, so definitely government having various measures. So especially we have national litigation policy. So especially to reduce the government litigation cases, and also we are establishing fast track courts on case by case. This is very important to deliver the justice within time. And also we have established a lot of e-courts along with various ADRs such as Lok Adalats, mediation, arbitration, especially to reduce the burden on courts.
Also, there is a national mission for justice delivery and legal reforms, that mainly reduction of delays and even to support the infrastructure and procedural reforms. Along with that, there is a centrally sponsored scheme for development of infrastructure for judiciary. It is mainly focused on court halls, even residential units of judges and lawyer halls, mainly overall basic amenities. So overall, to address this judicial pendency, there are few way forward solutions are there. First one is establishment of central authority. That means the National Judicial Infrastructure Authority, that is proposed by former Justice N.V. Ramana in 2020-21. They mentioned it is mainly to plan, create, and manage and maintain functional infrastructure of Indian courts. The next one is appointment of ad hoc judges. So since Article 128 and 224A of the Constitution to suggest to appoint experienced retired judges as ad hoc judges to clear the pending cases.
In addition to that, so we have to bring legal reforms, especially to deliver the justice within the time. So we have to make a strict timeline, especially for government litigation, and also we have to make this ADR mechanism is mandatory, especially for few civil cases. So then we have to expand the virtual courts and also AI-driven analysis, so that with the help of technology we can able to deliver justice within time. So then we have also established All India Judicial Services, especially to ensure equal quality so throughout the country. So to conclude this particular topic, so definitely, so justice should be treated as a service to the people, and also 3 T's are very important with respect to justice. So that is transparent, timely, and tech-driven justice. So then only we can able to ensure the social justice in the society.
Along with that, there should be a mechanism for controlling the adjournments, because there are, if you look at the delays due to more number of adjournments becoming delays. So that's why there should be regulation mechanism to address the adjournment issues.
Well, aspirants, that's it for today. We're winding the session. Keep preparing, keep analyzing. Thank you.